Hi everyone, we're here. This is supposed to be my 38-week update, but I'm gonna couple that with my 1 week postpartum update.
Well, the moment you felt you could start over new was the same that you realized the stories were true. You opened your eyes and the world you could see wasn't dim, it was brighter. You'd have to agree. Oh, now your fears are gone. They were buried with the dawn. And oh, now you feel alive for the very first time. Oh, now your fears are gone. They were buried with the dawn. And oh, now you feel alive for the first time. Not hold me yet. Not hold me yet. No, you're not home yet. No, not home. But you finally found the way.
At 38 weeks and 1 day, I had my son, Azariah, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So for the 38-week update portion, I did post on my Instagram all of the bump pictures for the third trimester, as well as the morning that I went into the birth center. So they're all there if you want to look at them. My Instagram is linked down below. You can check it out. I did do like a side-by-side comparison of like what I started with 5 weeks and then where I ended with 38 in 1 day. And it's crazy, the difference. I love it. But we're going to talk about the things that led up to birth, briefly about the birth, and then the after period, most prominently. So all through 38 weeks, like the last week that I was pregnant, like every day I had contractions for at least an hour. They were at night, whereas Gabriel's were in the morning. So in the evening at like 6, I'd start getting contractions, and then I'd be like, oh, this is interesting. And we kind of went back and forth, like hour long, 5 minutes apart. I could tell that they were there, but they weren't hurting, if that makes sense. Like they weren't painful. I was like, whatever. There were a couple of times where it was longer than an hour, and they were getting a little bit more intense, but again, not painful. And Gregory was like, you have to call. And I was like, she said to wait until I'm like working through them and, kind of need some of that pain management assistance. I just wasn't there. And I was like, I hardly feel them. It's enough to know they're there, but that's like it. And because of that, I've found it kind of hard to like track in my mind, just because it's so difficult for me. And it was like this with Gabriel too, to like, especially my early contractions, to feel the wave, if that makes sense. So if you've ever heard anything about having a baby, you know that contractions are supposed to be like a wave. You go up, build, like get to this climax point, and then it comes back down. And that's kind of like the way most contractions work. With Gabriel, I didn't have that at all when my labor got intense, because I had coupled contractions. So even though there was like a buildup, it was very, very short, and then it was a very prolonged climax period with the very slow downdrift that would only like get to like a halfway point before building again and then going down. So it was more like an M than a wave as far as like Gabriel's contractions were, and there were very short periods in between each wave. And my early labor, Braxton Hicks type contractions with both of them, I couldn't necessarily tell the wave part. It was just like, oh, okay, I'm having one, and I think it's gone. That was how, I kind of identified my contractions for both of them early on. Anyhow, every day it was like that. It was not intense. It was like there. Some days it really took it out of me. They didn't go away. They would always go for at least an hour. And I couldn't really do much to get rid of them in that hour, but they weren't really doing anything negative. Like, they weren't keeping me from doing much except telling me, like, to lay down, basically. So I did. And then sometimes I'd shower and, that kind of thing. And I did a lot of showering in that last week, which I remember doing a lot of with Gabriel, too. And, like, it was nice enough, but, like, really dries out your skin, especially in the winter. But it's the constant, like, weight and pressure that really you just want to, like, take off. And I'm hunching really bad because I'm still not used to not having to, like, hunch from, like, stomach weight. So I'm still, like, readjusting my posture and everything like that. But anyway, yeah, those were, like, my Braxton Hicks. That was the most notable thing that happened in that last week. And finally on Monday morning at, like, 4 a.m., 3 something, I woke up at 2 and I was like, I feel like I'm having contractions again, but whatever. And I had them the night before. Went back to bed, woke up at, like, 3, felt them again, and I was like, went back to bed, woke up at, like, 3:30, 3:40, closer to 4. Had a bunch of contractions, close, intense, could actually feel pain with them. Tried side lying, like, on my bed, tried using the yoga ball, tried the bath, and nothing was really helping, and I hadn't had morning contractions. And they were really close together and more intense, where I could actually feel, like, more pain, if that makes sense. Like, they weren't painful, but they felt more intense. And some of them, like, had, like, the stinging, burning little bit of, like, oh, ouch, this hurts kind of thing. But for the most part, I was talking through my contractions, so they were fine. And I was like, okay, it's really early in the morning. But because I had been having them for a while, and I was just, I don't know, up in the air, I called my mom at, like, 4:20-ish, and I was like, hey, what should I do? And I told her all the stuff, and she was like, I would probably call your midwife. So I did, and she was like, well, go back to bed, sleep as long as you can until you can't sleep anymore. And I was like, okay, and then we, like, would reevaluate. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. Told my mom I was going back to bed. My husband decided, because Gabriel was up at 4 and a bunch of other times throughout the night, and he was like, I think you're going to need extra sleep. I'm going to see if your mom will let me just, like, bring him over now, and then I'll drop him off on my way to work. So he did, and I was like, okay, cool. Went to sleep, and I think I slept till, like, 7:15, 7:30-ish, somewhere in that time frame, and Gregory left at, like, 6. So then I, like, got up, could feel the contractions, but they were less. And then I was going to come, like, text my midwife and tell her that, or, like, call her or whatever. And then she texted me, and she was like, how are you doing? And so I was like, okay, I'm fine. It's a little bit less, but still there. Still very, like, apparent. And she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I would like to know what's going on. Just because, like, is it, like, a constipation thing? Is it gas? Like, what's been, like, happening, And is it making any progress? Or is this really just, like, I'm pinpoint, I'm not dilated, like, this is just, my body's still revving up. And she was like, okay, why don't you come on in? And I was like, well, I do have an appointment in the evening if you just want to wait and check me then. And she was like, no, just come in. So I was like, okay. So I called Gregory. We were getting all ready to go. I called my cousin who filmed for me, and, well, I texted her, and I was like, so this is what we're doing. I don't know. They'll probably send us home. Like, I wasn't feeling very confident about it, and she's like, I'm going. Like, I'm coming with you. I was like, okay, cool. And long story short, so we went in. I did end up having the baby that day, and we'll talk about it. I also have my birth recorded. I did have a birth photographer, so I'll have pictures to share. I'm going to do some video. I'm just not ready to watch it yet because I'm not mentally ready yet. However, I do want to say that as a general note on my birth, it was long, like, I think we were there for 18 hours before he was born. No. We were not there for 18 hours. We were there for, like, 13 hours. But I had been having contractions since 4 a.m.-ish. That's when we started. Like, I woke up and actually had to do something with my body, so that's when I started labor in my mind. 4 a.m., and he was born at 10 p.m. almost. So It was a while. It was 18 hours from like start to finish. But the actual like laboring part, I don't count like the hour of pushing that I had as like labor per se. It was like 17 hours laboring, 1 hour pushing, or 18 hours of labor. However you want to, whatever. So that sounds like a really long time, especially considering my first, including pushing, was like 9 hours. However, again, we'll talk about it in more detail and I'll explain everything that kind of like happened. But the labor part, like the 17 hours of labor part, really weren't that bad. Like, even when I was like really working through my contractions, and like, if you've ever heard of like it has a name. I don't know what it is, but I just refer to it as like the guttural moan. It's like a cow sound, kind of, when you're like, body's ready to push, you're fully dilated, your baby's coming, right? Like, many women talk about this in relation to birth. Birth professionals talk about it as like almost like a sure sign kind of thing. And I knew myself I could get there. However, my contractions with him were very up and down. So I had plenty of breaks, which was life-changing. Holy crap. Totally different birth experience because of that. Not in a bad way. It was in a good way. That doesn't mean I think my first birth was bad in any way. It made it so much better and easier for me that even when like I could still talk through and walk in between each of my contractions, even though when I did have my contractions, they were very intense and what have you, but the pain was not anything on the same level as with Gabriel when I was at that intense part. But, moral of the story, that was super bearable. And I did have some times where my contractions did slow down and then they ramped back up and slowed back down and ramped back up. So I did have quite a bit of like break, if that makes sense. And I slept like in the afternoon for I think it was like 30 minutes to an hour or something like that. So very like different experience in that way, but a lot less intense, which to any second time mom, first time mom, any mom out there, anyone who's pregnant, 18 hours sounds like super horrible for your second baby, especially after I did so well in terms of like short timing with Gabriel. However, I would take the labor that I had with Azariah over the labor I had with Gabriel any day for all 18 hours. Like, it was so much less on my body that if I had been doing the intensity of Gabriel for those 18 hours, I would have tapped out a long time before he was born. But the intensity wasn't ever there the same way. So a lot more relaxing. And that was in and of itself very empowering to me, because I was just like, they were like, yep, you can get in the tub, it's time, like whatever. My last few contractions before I got in the tub, I was crying. And it wasn't necessarily so much that I was in pain. I was actually really excited. It was like a hormonal thing. I don't know what was going on with that. I remember thinking to myself, I'm really not in that much pain. Like, the pain is not that bad, but I could not stop myself from crying. So I don't know what that was about. I did not end up delivering him in the tub, which again we will talk about. But the 1 hour of pushing that I did for him to be born was absolutely horrendous. It was horrible. The gist of why is that essentially I had to push him into the birth canal and then through the birth canal and out. So normally when you're contracting and the basic part of your labor, besides dilating, effacing, and getting your baby in the correct position, it's making your baby move down into the birth canal so that you can deliver. All of that stuff was happening, except my baby was not descending. He did not want to go down. That part was the only part that was missing. Everything else my body was super, super ready for. So I just had to like give him a really big push, which was a lot on me. So then by the time that I was actually delivering, it was way more intense, way more painful. It was harder for me to feel my contractions until he was actually like in the birth canal, like ready to go. But that took the longest part of the longest amount of time was getting him into that position. And that was also the most taxing. So much effort. It was tiring. It was painful. And then his delivery was just harder because he had not sat and stretched out my cervix. That sounds really bad, but I'll explain. He hadn't done that with and put that pressure there. it was a lot more intense to push him out, which was a lot more painful because they didn't have to, but they assisted me by holding everything open basically until he got through so that I could deliver more safely, more easily. It was just so much more painful. And that's okay. It is okay. But it was just that part no. I'll take Gabriel's pushing period over that. Oh, that was rough. That was rough. But it was still only like an hour, and it really wasn't that bad overall. There's a lot more to that story, and there's video, and we'll talk all about it, but that's the basic gist. I can't remember if I updated you guys in the 37-week video. I think I did, but my hemoglobin was really low. Not unsafe, but just really low, where they had wanted me to get iron infusions. They just didn't happen. Because of that, I did bleed a lot more heavily, so I did have to get a shot of Pitocin, and then after I delivered, I got an IV in my arm, but everything was totally fine and okay. All of that stuff was good. The one thing after birth that really makes me feel fabulous is like, I felt so much more energized. My face, like I could smile. Like the first pictures of me and him, like I was smiling and I was so happy. And like my immediate thought wasn't, I'm never doing that again, which is totally what it was for Gabriel. I was like, oh, okay, it's done. It's over. That was horrible. Don't get me wrong. But like, I can do it again if I have to. This is great. I love this baby. It's amazing. Okay? I was way more like in tune with that part of the experience than I was with Gabriel. And it doesn't make me like sad or regret anything with Gabriel's birth. I was so exhausted as a first-time mom in a totally different way, and I didn't prepare my body as well for what that marathon labor was like versus this one, and I was so much more prepared, and it gave me a lot of pride because it was so much easier for me to recover in my own self. And everyone was like, you look terrible, like you were losing a ton of blood, like it was safe obviously, but like to observers that aren't familiar with how much blood you can lose during labor and what is safe and what's not safe, obviously I needed the Pitocin because I was losing a lot more than I should have because I didn't have it to be replaced because anemic, but it was still safe. Everything was safe. If it wasn't safe, I would have been transferred to the hospital because safety is like their number one priority. So I was in good hands. I was totally well cared for. I was very safe. Everything was totally fine. And I was very proud of myself because I hardly felt the shot. And they were like, you have to get a shot of Pitocin. And I was like, no. And they were like, gotta. And I was like, okay, can you numb it? And they were like, the numbing stings worse. And then just like, and I was like, okay, I feel like a baby now. I really did. I felt so, because I was like, there were moments. There were some serious moments that I'm not ready to watch yet. Hence, not ready to start editing that video. That we did stay at the birth center this time for the full 8 hours after I stopped bleeding. And we slept there for a number of hours, nursed and stuff like that. And in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m., I woke up to like an afterbirth contraction, which any like mom who's had multiple kids has probably said or probably will say that the afterbirth contractions are horrible and they get worse with each kid. Okay, on top of that, I had Pitocin, so it was more intense right away. It was so horrible. I had I wasn't ready for that, but he had, Azariah had latched and was like actually actively nursing, and that's what I think triggered it. Oh, it was horrible. So they gave me what's called After Ease. It's a tincture, and it immediately worked, and it was amazing, and they were like, you can take this every 15 minutes. Tastes horrible, super worth it. I ended up taking it like every hour from 3 to like 7 a.m., 6:30ish, right in that time frame before we left. I took it like every hour whenever I felt an after birth contraction, like my uterus going back down to size. When we left, my uterus was the size of a grapefruit, which is about where they want it, or when I went to bed. I can't remember. While we were still there. Way better than Advil, pain, Tylenol, whatever. This tincture was amazing. Thought I had it at home, didn't have it at home. It was really rough when we first got home because of that. When we got home, it was like up the stairs, it was so hard to walk. I don't remember it being that difficult to walk. Like in my joints, it felt hard to walk. And I had been having a lot of hip pain and back pain and all that kind of stuff, and it's still residually there, but it was so much more than with Gabriel. It was so hard. Like walking made me want to vomit, and it felt like from the pain. Maybe that was because of my low iron and because I had lost a lot more blood. That's basically what I was warned against, is like, make sure there's always someone with you for the first 48 hours. Really get up slowly, really, really watch yourself, because you are at risk for fainting. And, you know, keep taking your iron supplement, blah, 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 blah. But going to the bathroom itself, way easier. So, like, you know, we got home, we settled in, hung out, did the thing. I'm going to the bathroom every couple hours like I'm supposed to, and it really wasn't, like I said, wasn't horrible. Obviously, I used the Perry bottle, and I have until, like, today. I used it once today, I think. It doesn't hurt, and everything feels a lot less swollen down there. So I haven't used that a ton, quite honestly. And I haven't used any, like, witch hazel spray or anything either. We, like, do skin to skin, like we try to do an hour a day at least. But he just really hates being cold, to the point where he's so upset and uncomfortable when we do skin to skin that I've tried to, like, ease the transition for him and made sure I have, like, a really warm baby blanket plus another blanket for weight on top of that, so that he's as warm as possible without, like, overheating. Like, he does want to sleep on my chest, and he does, you know, sleep on me. He wants to, but he also can, like, I'd say half the time be laid down into the crib and just, like, hang out. So it's just a totally different experience in that regard, because obviously they're different kids, but they're way different, like, total opposites, which they have been since conceived. So totally different. Finally, I said I was going to do postpartum, like, belly pictures, kind of like I did with my bump shots, except I'm going to do postpartum pictures, like, 1 through 40 weeks, to show, like, this is normal. But in this video, I am going to show you what my stomach looks like almost a week after birth. One thing that I do want to preface this with is my uterus is probably back to its normal size, if just very close, if not there. Most of the weight that I put on is with the baby and then in my back. So my stomach is probably going to look a lot smaller than what yours will look like. Unless you have, like, that kind of similar body mentality. But I do want to point out that you won't be able to see it super well, but my skin elasticity is very much affected because of how fast my stomach shrinks. And I have a lot of stretch marks, which I know, like, it doesn't really bother me, but I know for a lot of women it's a point of insecurity. So when you see my stomach, I don't want you to be like, oh wow, you're super thin already. There's still, like, yeah, I lost a bunch of weight right away, because you push out a baby, you push out a lot of blood, everything kind of shrinks back down. It's not nearly as swollen. But I am definitely still, like, bigger than I was prior to getting pregnant, and my skin takes a really huge hit from that. So there's a trade-off in this, like, idea that, oh, well, if I lose all the weight really fast, like, I'll just look better. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because your body took so long to put it on, you need X amount of time to take it back off. So either way, I just want to preface with, this is my reality, and every experience is normal, a variation of normal. And whatever your body looks like, that's okay. If it looks similar to mine or totally different, both of those things are okay. We all made babies, we had babies, we had to do something really, really tough, and we need to give our bodies the flexibility to get back to what they were whenever they're going to get back. And they'll never go fully back, I'm sure, but I mean, I didn't after Gabriel, so I don't expect that. But I do want to be honest and show you these things. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go get him. So this is with my maternity pants on. This is totally relaxed. Put them off. My core muscles and hip flexor muscles, I think, are the ones that have taken the biggest hit and have also, like, remained the most fatigued out of everything. And I'm totally okay with that because, you know, that's just what the experience is. That's everything postpartum that have experienced, have thought about, have really been able to share. Like I said, I will do a more in-depth birth story if you guys would like to hear that. I am also gonna do a birth video at some point in time. Again, just not ready to watch the footage yet. Anyone who's had a baby will totally understand that. And if it's not like a fear thing, it's more for me personally. This is my 1-week postpartum update and my 38-week pregnancy update all rolled into one. I hope you enjoyed a brief summary of my birth story. Even though it didn't seem brief, I promise you it was. And I look forward to being able to talk to you guys more when I'm feeling better and more confident about things. Otherwise, regular videos should be resuming as normal. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Love, Genevieve.